Trade and Industry Minister Ebrahim Patel is the latest of President Cyril Ramaphosa's cabinet ministers to test positive for COVID-19. Mineral Resources Minister Gwede Mantashe, as well as Labour Minister Thulas Nxesi, are also in hospital after testing positive. Now, Sunday Times columnist Peter Bruce wrote an interesting article about the president's aging cabinet and how that is impacting on governance. He now joins me on the fix via Skype. Peter, good morning. Thank you so very much, my old sparring partner, for saying yes. I was reading your column in the Sunday Times, and it's headed saying, tired Cyril needs to find his courage. A lot of people were noticing that the president looked quite tired when he addressed the nation, speaking about the children going back to school and, of course, issuing that special proclamation on, corruption. Do you think that the president's physical appearance kind of almost mirrored, if you like, his political state of mind?
In a way, it just absolutely has to, He's carrying a huge load. He's under enormous pressure from left and right and lots of criticism. He has a lot of his closer ministers are in hospital or not available. It really, what worries me, however well he may or may not be doing, what happens if he gets sick? Because the deputy president, Didi Mabuza, hasn't been really visible in these past weeks, and this last week and next week has pulled out of parliamentary hearings and debates, citing ill health. So he's sick too. We don't know what with. He's been sick for a long time. Keeps complaining he's been poisoned, but there's a certain complete sort of absence of leadership in the country at the moment, and it's partly got to do with the fact that we're in lockdown, but it's partly got to do with the fact that people are just sick.
Absolutely. You raise such an important question, Peter. If you look at Minister Patel, he is part of the National Command Centre, and of course not all ministers necessarily serve on there. If you look at someone like Gwede Mantashe, he doesn't have a deputy. He's responsible for our energy policy, and of course you can't work on the economy if you don't have proper energy policy, working. And if your deputy doesn't go to the National Council of Provinces, as Didi Mabuza did last week due to ill health, you've got to begin to ask yourself who will then govern the country in the event that the president, for one or other reason, is incapacitated. What do you think the president ought to do to set South Africa's minds at rest, that in the event that senior members of the cabinet do take ill, that competent people will in fact be able to take charge?
Yeah, it's a difficult thing. Sorry, I didn't hear all of that. Your sound cut in and out, but I think I got the drift. Look, what we need to know about President Ramaphosa is what his state of health is. If he's being tested for COVID-19, we should know that he's being tested, and we should know what the results are. Ebrahim Patel probably has the least comorbidities of anybody in government. But Ramaphosa sits and heads a cabinet of some extremely overweight and possibly diabetic people. And it's a factor. It's become a factor. It's become a political factor now, possibly in the way decisions are made and what decisions are made. The only way to restore public confidence is transparency, which Ramaphosa has been really, really poor at throughout this whole thing, despite promising that he would be transparent during the process. As it's gone along, as COVID has spread, he's become less and less transparent and less accountable to the public. And it's wrong. And he would do himself an enormous amount of good if he started talking to us more informally, more regularly, and took questions. He's not very good at questions, and there are stories, But he needs to make an effort, and he needs to be seen to make an effort, and he's not making it.
Now, of course, Peter, you've probably seen the front pages of the newspapers. The president's spokesperson, Kusela Dlamini, seems to be embroiled in a scandal of sorts that links her to the wife of the MEC for Health in Gauteng, Mr. Bandile Masuko. How damaging is it for President Ramaphosa to have a spokesperson embroiled in corruption related to COVID-19 at this time when he's just signed a proclamation for the SIU to investigate these issues?
Look, Karima, I haven't read this. I know the story you're referring to. I haven't read it. I haven't seen the papers this morning yet, but it's in the independent group newspapers, written as an attack, I suppose, on Ramaphosa. But if Kusela Dlamini has been nailed reasonably, forcefully, and reasonably accurately, she would need to step aside, either temporarily or until this thing is cleared up, because her job to represent the president is critical. You know, she wrote a very good piece the other day in the Sunday Times on his behalf, saying how difficult it was to run the country in a situation like this. But once your credibility is damaged in the way that hers might have been, we haven't seen a response to it. You might, Cyril Ramaphosas might need to ask her to stand aside until it's cleared up one way or another. She's a spokesman. She's not a decision maker. And he can find other people to do that job.
Absolutely. Now, Peter, let's come back to the cabinet. You were speaking also about the finance minister, Tito Mboweni. And of course, we know that there is quite a lot of unhappiness within cabinet around him. You are a supporter of the finance minister. Do you think that Tito Mboweni's position in the cabinet is secure, considering the fact that there's quite an assault on his supplementary budget and also a push, for a different kind of economic approach away from austerity?
Well, this is the coming battle in South Africa, and this, before we write off Ramaphosa or write off the country for that matter, we have to find a way through this, because you could see the head of the economic policy unit in the Treasury the other day, Duncan Peterson, saying something along the lines of that stimulus is not the way out of the mess that we are in. So the Treasury and the Reserve Bank are standing up, not necessarily for austerity, because they both support the view that if we start building infrastructure at pace, we could stimulate economic activity. But a stimulus, i.e., what the left want, which is basically pumping money into the economy, is not possible, according to the Treasury and the Reserve Bank, who should know better. That has to resolve itself. Nobody's going to get rid of Tito now, because he's the guy who's just managed to borrow $4.5 billion from the International Monetary Fund, and another $1 billion from the BRICS Bank. So those institutions aren't going to lend any money to South Africa. They're going to start getting rid of reasonably competent finance ministers like Mboweni.
All right, that is where we leave it. My former sparring partner here on The Fix, Peter Bruce, speaking to us there via Skype. Well, you've had your fix for the week. See you again next Sunday. Thank you so much for watching.